Hi, my name is Joy Campbell. I'm the Senior Director of Research and Development at APC, and today I'd like to talk with you about the use of spray-dried plasma in early turkey nutrition. Before I get into the data on turkeys, I'd like to talk with you about what is spray-dried plasma and a little bit of its mode of action and its amino acid profile and digestibility. So what is spray-dried plasma? It's a protein-rich feed ingredient that is obtained from the blood of healthy pigs and cattle that are used for human consumption. The spray-dried plasma is especially processed to help maintain the functionality of these proteins. It's a very complex mixture, so when we think about these functional proteins, we think about them having biological action beyond just their nutritional value. What we have seen when these proteins are fed to animals, we've seen improvements in performance and the overall health. These proteins are commonly utilized in swine, ruminant, and in other diets. We spend a lot of time trying to understand the mode of action of plasma and know that it is tightly associated with immune modulation. A lot of this work is summarized in a review paper by Campbell et al. 2019 in Microorganisms, where there's a lot of rat and mouse work that has been done to help understand how these proteins are working and helping to maintain the gut, to help impact the inflammatory response under different type of challenges, which then leads to helping to support and maintain the gut and the immune system to make an efficient immune response, helping with the gut health, which then leads to overall what the producer sees is a better feed efficiency, better weight gain, lower mortality, overall improvements such as in uniformity, breast meat yield, etc. So what do we see? What happens when plasma is fed to young chickens? We've seen improvements in performance. We've seen improvements in overall health. We've seen them able to withstand different type of stressors, whether it be heat stress, disease stresses, which we'll kind of cover at the end, kind of summarizing some of the different studies that have been done. We've seen reductions in mortality. We've seen improvements in helping the overall immune response, and then also easing problems during different type of with or without antibiotics. Some of the work that we've looked at is also, we do see that it's a very digestible protein. This was work Parsons done by et al. Presented last 2019 at the PSA meetings, where they were looking at the amino acid digestibility compared to soybean meal. We looked at it at both 10 days old birds and 21 day old. And what we'll see is with plasma, we see a good amino acid digestibility at 10 days of age compared to soybean meal, and also having a nice digestibility at 21 days of age compared to the soybean meal. Now, Polo et al. Reported when incorporating these proteins, then not only having a good amino acid digestibility, but when incorporated into the diet, improving the overall nutrient digestibility of increasing such as protein digestibility, dry matter digestibility, and organic matter digestibility when included in the diet. The data from Parsons of looking at the digestibilities for formulation, there is a profile of amino acid profile of plasma that's readily available to have either the day 10 digestibility or day 21, depending upon how you're formulating. So both is readily available. The other thing we get a lot of questions about is how does plasma work through the different feed processing technologies? There was a series of experiments that was done, published back in 2006 in the Journal of Animal Science by Campbell et al., looking at both pelleting and expanded diets. This example is just highlighting one of the pelleted and expanded diets where we saw pelleting the diets at 85C, still not losing the plasma effect, and also putting them through the expanded diet, seeing an increase when plasma was added, looking at evaluating it by body weights at 21 days of age. So whether it went through pelleted diets or expanded diets, there was an improvement in performance with the animals when including plasma in the diet. Now I'd like to get into some of the turkey data. This was data that was study that was performed back in looking at a respiratory challenge, a challenge of pastoral Meltopsida that's developed into fowl cholera. Essentially what was done was the turkeys were being offered the proteins through the water, and then they were challenged and then followed for 14 days post-challenge. Early on, we started to lose some of the control birds. You can see the survival started dropping. It mimicked similar to what can happen in a field is when birds start to, you have a disease happen, they started to spread it among the flock. And so you saw the survival at the end of 14 days with the controls was 63% survival, whereas with the turkey poults that were being offered the plasma via the water, we saw a 94% survival. So a significant increase in survival when utilizing these functional proteins under a respiratory challenge. Another study I'd like to highlight is work that was presented at the IPSF meetings last year, looking at feeding plasma at 2% in the starter period and then following them to 20 weeks of age to look at the overall performance. This was done in floor pens with new litter and with no specific health challenges. We had 9 replications per treatment utilizing the hybrid converter TOMS. Diets were formulated and following the recommendations of the genetic company. And the treatments I'd like to highlight is the control diet and then 2% plasma that was fed for only the first 4 weeks of age, and then common diets after that up to 20 weeks of age. Here we're looking at the feed conversion results for the different periods. If we're looking at the first 2 weeks, we saw a significant improvement in feed conversion going from a 121 down to a 119. Feed conversion at 6 weeks of age was also improved. And at 20 weeks of age, going from a 2.9 down to a 2.83. So again, improving the overall feed conversion at 20 weeks of age when feeding it just for the first 4 weeks of age. Body weights were also monitored. Body weights at 2 weeks of age, we saw a numeric increase, continuing to have that increase at 6 weeks of age. And then by 20 weeks of age, not really seeing any difference in the body weight gain, but showing a similar performance with the controls. Looking at mortality, we also did see a reduction in mortality when utilizing the 2% plasma, going from a control of a 5.2% down to a 3.1% with the plasma inclusion. Another factor that was looked at was productivity per squared meter. We did see an increase. It was not significantly different, but an increase of kilos per meter squared in productivity. And then some other additional key measurements that were taken in this study was looking at abdominal fat pad. We saw a reduction in abdominal fat at 20 weeks of age. Foot pad lesion scores, whether it be with the lower scores of a 0-1, we see an increase with plasma. And then when you see the higher scores of a 2 or a 3, you see a reduction with the use of plasma. And then kind of taking it all into account, which would be body weight, mortality, feed conversion, and looking at the production efficiency index at 20 weeks of age, we see a trend, a p-value of 0.08 of an increase with utilizing the plasma proteins at 2% for the first 4 weeks and following them out to 20 weeks of age and improving the overall production efficiency index. So to kind of summarize the overall performance at 20 weeks of age, what were the percent differences that we saw versus the control diet? With intake, it was a negative. We did a difference below. Body weight's really no differences. With feed efficiency, we saw a 2.3% improvement in feed efficiency. Livability was a 2.3% improvement in livability. The production efficiency was a 4.4% improvement, and with the kilos per meter squared, a 2% improvement in production. So again, these were all measurements, and this was the differences at 20 weeks of age of the plasma-fed turkeys versus the control-fed. Another thing I'd like to highlight is evaluation in the field. This was a field study that was done in the upper Midwest with TOMS, and this was done by looking at 24 months of their closeout information, and then making a change with the diets of putting plasma into the diets and then following the system again for several months after. And this was utilizing statistical process control charting in order to evaluate this feed program change. So what we're looking at here is the body weight. So we're looking at the left side is the system, the closeout body weights, the normal variation that was occurring in that system. And then we made the change and then continuing on with the system. And you'll see a shift up on the right side, the system shifted up. Variation got a little bit tighter. Essentially, we went from a 34.3 to a 36.5 closeout bird, a 6.3% improvement by utilizing the proteins in the diet and making this change. Another thing we followed was looking at feed conversion closeout. Again, the variation that was occurring, we went from a 271 to a 261, a 3.7% improvement in feed conversion. So again, a different way to evaluate, not a side-by-side comparison, but evaluating a system change and then looking back, seeing if the shifts occurred when the changes did occur. So we're seeing an improvement there. So overall, there's been quite a bit of work that's been done looking at plasma in poultry. This slide kind of highlights some of the different references of work that's been done back in from the 2006s, 2019, 2020, looking at some of the different effects of improving performance, increased tolerance, whether it be during disease challenges, whether it be necrotic enteritis, salmonella, other type of stressors such as heat stress or stocking density, looking at chick quality, and then some of the specific health benefits that have been looked at, such as a gut health or in bone health, and then seeing reductions. Several of them have looked at reductions in mortality, and then also looking at early nutrition. How are we impacting the immune system and the digestibility, etc. So a lot of different papers out there to look at of showing the effects of plasma in poultry. So overall, I'd like to summarize here of the use of plasma in poultry. We've seen, again, improvements in the overall health and performance, have helped in to support that animal, help support and maintain an efficient immune response to improve the overall performance and health, helping in low-quality chicks, getting them off to a good start. These proteins can be utilized in the context with other feed additives. There has been work that was published by Walters all with or without BMD in the diet. So again, different ways to evaluate and utilize these proteins. And again, what we've seen is a reduction in the overall negative impact of different stressful type situations, whether it be the housing, whether it be heat stress, whether it be vaccination stress, different type of stressors that we've seen to be able to, the benefits of the proteins to improve the overall health and performance of the animals. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time today as we conclude. If there is any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You also could visit our website at apcproteins.com. Again, thank you for your time. Have a good day.